Greetings, everyone, and a very warm welcome to yet another edition of Marketing the Invisible. Got a treat for you today, joined by Jeff Goins. Jeff, g'day from down under. Where are you hanging out, sir?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, Tom.
And little birdie told me you're a big music fan, and you got there because you chased a girl.
I chased a girl.
That's often the reason, but you're settled there now for 15 or 16 years, is that right?
That's right, 16 years.
And feel like you've come home. So for those of you who don't know Jeff, Jeff has an impeccable touch to everything he does. He's a wordsmith, he's careful, and he constructs quality solutions to big problems. His background is he's a writer, he's a keynote speaker, and he's an entrepreneur with multiple businesses. He's also a best-selling author, which tells you he's walking the talk of 5 books, including The Art of Work and Real Artists Don't Starve. And I just love the title for the session that Jeff's nominated. It's How to Find Your Big Idea. And I've got a feeling we're going to learn a little bit more than just that as well, although that's a magnificent place to start. Jeff, welcome to the show. Our time starts now. Question number 1, sir. Who's your ideal client?
Hey, Tom, good to be here again. Thank you. Our ideal client is any thought leader or aspiring thought leader who's ready to pick a fight, who has something that they want to say about their industry or particular topic that is going to challenge the status quo. Most of what I do is help people create books that are worth reading and talking about. And if you're not going to pick a fight, if you're going to settle for good instead of interesting, you've already lost, and we would rather refer you to one of our competitors.
There's a certain boldness about your mission, isn't there? There's a certain, challenging of the status quo, or the expression of authenticity in the face of opposition. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, in the past 10 years, the amount of books published each year has increased by 10 times. And as a reader and as a person who loves words, I don't think the world needs more boring books. And so I care about that. I care about not putting more boring books out in the world. If you're going to write a book, make it worth our while as readers.
Thank you, sir. So we've got just under 6 minutes left. What's the problem you solve? How would you define that?
We help authors not write boring books, and it is really easy to write a boring book.
Yeah.
And boring isn't necessarily bad, but it might as well be. People do not talk about ideas that are good or even great. They talk about ideas that are interesting, ideas that are worth talking about, that challenge an audience's assumptions. And yeah, I mean, that's the problem that we help people solve. Most people settle for good when what they really want is interesting.
Do you find a lot of people homogenize their ideas and their voice so that it's defensible and so they don't offend anyone? Is that part of the issue? Well, let's talk about that. But the question 3 is one of the typical symptoms that people experience when they end up with a boring book. What would you say is going on that creates that, or how does someone know that they've done that?
I think they're tired. It's actually really, really hard to write even a bad book. Imagine a continuum where 0 is I haven't written a book, and 100 is I've written the perfect book. 80, if you get to 80%, you've written a bad book. But you went 80%, you wrote a book.
Right.
And the gap between good and great is much smaller than the gap between no book and bad book. Between nothing and bad is a lot. It's 80% of the way. And most people give up at 80% because it's really, really hard and really exhausting. And so the symptom is they're tired. They're trying to do it themselves. And they've gotten to this point and they think, well, I've written a book. Now the real work begins. Now I can start marketing it. That is false. The marketing begins as soon as you start writing the book.
Yeah. That's a really key point, folks. The marketing begins the moment you start writing the book, because you've got to figure out what the marketplace needs to hear from you, your gift and so on.
That's right.
Sure.
Yeah. And what I mean by that is great marketing makes a bad product fail faster. David Ogilvy said that many years ago. It's true. And if you write a book that's based on an okay idea and try to sell it, it's going to flop.
Right. So That's definitely, I mean, clearly it's, as you've articulated, it's one of the big mistakes that people make. But are there any other, question 4, over 3 minutes left. What would you say are a couple of the other big mistakes people make when they're trying to get that book written?
I mentioned they try to do it all themselves. They settle for a
Right.
good idea instead of an interesting one. And they think that editing is about fixing typos. Editing is not about fixing typos. Editing is the process of making your book work. It's helping you realize the vision.
What I'm hearing here is that a lot of us have ideas. It's not uncommon, hopefully.
Yep.
We are good at something that we do, but putting a book out that's interesting and engaging, that can, as they say, feed a starving crowd, that can generate demand, that's a whole science in itself. And let's recognize that right now and say, folks, you're probably going to want a hand with this. But question 5 is, let's give folks one valuable free action, like a top tip. It's not going to solve the whole problem. They probably need to reach out for you to have that conversation, but it's just a step that heads them off in the right direction.
Very simple. We take every client through this. It's a formula. Everybody thinks X, but what's actually true is Y. When people ask you what your book is about, that's your answer, not it's a book about marketing. Everybody thinks this about a given subject, but what's actually true is something you've never heard of before. Because what makes people think and then talk about your book and then even want to read it is that there's some interesting idea. And it might be something old said in a new way, but you are challenging their assumptions about a given topic. So write that down, email that to me if you want. Everybody thinks X, but what's actually true is Y. And I'd be happy to tell you if you have an interesting idea.
Email address?
Jeff@goinswriter.com.
JEFF@GOINSwriter.com. Thank you for that, sir. Question 6, for the sake of time, I'm going to answer this one. One valuable free resource, folks. You want to go to www.goinswriter.com, GOINSwriter.com. And the other URL I want to give you, and we don't normally give 2, but I think this one's an excellent example, and again, a point of contact and free resource, is freshcomplaint.com. You heard that right. It's fresh as in just out of the oven, complaint as in criticism.com. What are people going to find at that first one? Goins Writer, real quick, 10 seconds.
Treasure trove of writing resources, some free downloadable ebooks, and all kinds of other things.
Fantastic. Goinswriter.com. Question 7, last question, Jeff. 30 seconds left. What's the one question I should have asked you but didn't?
What does fresh complaint mean? And what that it means what it sounds like, which is that, we've named our writing and editing agency after a phrase that means if you don't have something new to say that's going to pick a fight, then don't say it.
Perfect. Jeff Goins, thanks so much for the wisdom and the richness of your insights, which surely has come out of many years of doing this well. Thanks, Jeff.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for checking out our Marketing the Invisible podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate us, and leave us a review. It's very much appreciated. And if you want to generate 5 fresh leads in just 5 hours, then check out www.5hourchallenge.com.